Hello! Today I'll be walking you through my research on creativity in Ontario's elementary curriculum documents. My main research question revolves around whether or not the age-old misapprehension that creativity is initially tied to the arts is reflected and/or embedded within Ontario's elementary curriculum documents. My subsidiary questions look into what subjects deem creativity to be a valued skill that should be fostered and assessed, and whether or not teachers are presented with an explanation of what creativity is and how it should be manifested and evaluated in the classroom. The 4 documents I've coded reflect the 4 subjects that tie into my research question regarding the value of creativity. So, we have the 2 traditionally right-brained subjects, thought of as being more subjective and based on creativity and intuition, versus the 2 traditionally left-brained subjects associated more with logic, analysis, and procedure-based activities. That's language and the arts versus science and technology and mathematics. For the sake of my research, I've excluded the health and physical education document, the French as a second language document, and the social studies document due to their irrelevance to my main research question. Throughout each document, although the depth of the discussion of creativity varies from document to document, there's a consistent association of creativity to critical thinking processes, most often in association with problem solving, inquiry, and connections to the real world. Each document suggests that in order to influence critical thinking, teachers should be asking students open-ended questions and encouraging students to look beyond the literal meanings of the texts discussed in class. Each document lists a variation of these required processes in their thinking strand of the assessment and evaluation section of the document. When viewing the mathematics and science and technology documents, there are similarities between the ways in which creative thinking skills appear. In mathematics and science and tech, creative thinking is very rarely labeled as such. When reading through the documents, I was searching for values associated with what the literature suggests that creativity entails. For example, these documents don't specifically list high-order thinking and critical thinking skills and the ability for students to make connections to the real world as a creative skill, although it is. The ability to draw out similarities between hypothetical issues to the real world requires deep thinking and calls upon the creative mind to connect one with the other. Another example is the emphasis both of these documents put on problem solving, questioning, and analyzing. These skills challenge students to find various possibilities and solutions to problems, which requires students to use their imagination to play out these situations in their mind, which is a creative skill. With these documents, I found that although creativity itself is not often mentioned, and the term wasn't actually discussed, the skills associated with creative thinking seem to be quite highly valued. In language, critical thinking was a bit more present than in the previous 2 documents. Here, although it was still not explicitly discussed very often, notions associated with creativity were still clearly valued. Once again, we see the need for students to connect what they've learned to the world around them, a skill which requires deep and imaginative thinking. We also see metacognition appear here as a skill, the ability to reflect upon one's thinking processes, which is yet another deeper form of abstract and creative thinking. A value in language that was not present in the previous 2 is the ability to produce interesting and original writing in a way that reflects their capacity for independent and critical thought. This document specifically stresses the need for students to think creatively about topics and their personal interests and apply that to their work. While the previous 2 documents incorporated creative values, here we are seeing creativity itself become more valued as creative thinking is highlighted within the overall expectations in the subject. While the previous documents display a need for students to think creatively as a skill associated with the understanding and success of other topics in the subject, the arts consider creative thinking to be the basis and the foundation of everything. The document constantly discusses the need for students to use their imagination, to reflect on and express themselves and what they've learned in class, to invent, infer, and to use problem solving as a thinking process embedded in everything they do, Rather than seeing creative thinking as a skill that must sometimes be practiced to better students in other parts of the curriculum, here we are seeing creative thinking as the basis of the curriculum. While the other documents stated that teachers should be asking students open-ended questions to inspire critical thinking, there were very limited examples of these types of questions. Here we see one of the many extensive lists of exact types of questions teachers should be asking in class. While each subject has a thinking strand that claims that teachers should be assessing their students' ability to think critically and creatively, the arts makes it clear exactly how teachers should be doing this. That leads me into my next theme that I'll be discussing today, the fact that the two traditionally left-brain subjects only seem to incorporate notions of creativity and only in association with other valued skills. To a point, the documents fail to portray creativity in a way that the literature suggests that they should. While they do not abandon all notions of creativity entirely, it is not clear to the casual reader that creativity is valued at all in these two subjects. Without this deep analytical reading of these documents, I would have not realized that math and science and technology attribute any value to creativity at all. The language document focuses on the construction of meaning through critical and creative thinking and calls for originality, independence, and imaginative processes, but math and science mention no such thing, although they are subjects that require some of these skills. Even though it clearly values creativity more so than math and science, the language document still fails to adequately define and provide examples of what creative thinking actually is and how teachers should be incorporating it into the classroom and assessing for it. The arts document, on the other hand, believes that creative thinking is the foundation to all learning and provides extensive examples of how to foster a learning environment that welcomes originality and exploration. I mean, very extensive examples. Here, I've cut to the arts curriculum document just to scroll through and show you that these are all of the examples of ways that teachers can incorporate creative thinking into their classroom. So creative thinking being skills that are present within each curriculum document, but only explained and given examples for in the arts document. And you can see I'm scrolling through quite a lot here. There are many examples that could be applied in every curriculum subject, and yet they're not present in every curriculum subject. And I'm wondering why this is. Although the arts curriculum document is a bit more recent than the other curriculum documents, my question is, why is something like this only present in this document while a subject like science, that we see values exploration and discovery so highly, does not have such examples? This is all it's got, examples like this that we see on the left. In the math document, we see the four-step problem-solving model appear with a claim that some students may have difficulty applying their knowledge in problem-solving activities because they haven't yet internalized a model that can guide them through this process. After this, it clarifies that this model these students may be missing is one of metacognition and reflection, a creative skill. This document mentions what students should be doing to improve their problem-solving abilities, but it does not say how. Why is it that self-reflection, self-confidence, inquiry, and originality are so much more valued in a subject like the arts and not in all parts of our curriculum when these are characteristics of all learning fields? The literature suggests that creativity is a vitally important function of intelligence as relevant to science, technology, and the humanities as it is to the arts. But based off of what we see here, it is not being portrayed as such. While the math and science documents mention creative thinking as something that must be assessed, it is mentioned in passing. There is no clarification as to what a level 4 creative thinker would produce in a science, math, or even a language class. It's not discussed in these documents how this critical or creative thinking should be manifested in the classroom, so how are these documents ensuring that educators are interpreting and evaluating this consistently with one another? How are they ensuring that students know what is expected of them to exceed? and succeed in the program. To conclude, thank you for listening to me discuss some of my findings, and if you'd like to learn more about what themes I discovered within Ontario's curriculum documents, please read my paper once it's completed in the new year. Happy holidays!